Right now we're at the clone room at our 3400 Las Vegas location. Uh, we have about 5,000 clones here, 5 to 8,000 clones at any given time.
You say clones. What do you mean by that?
So what we do is we take our moms and we cut about 100 to 200 clones off of each mom, put them in the right environment, and about 10 to 14 days later we get roots. So a genetic clone.
I noticed the doors are labeled mom and pod and things like that.
Yeah, so we got every room has a designated purpose. We do share some rooms just because of the phase that they're in, but our cultivation team likes to have a good time, make their job a little bit more interesting.
Now, one of the things that we've never seen up until the legalization boom came through is industrial level cultivation of marijuana plants. How difficult is it to create crops with constant, consistent levels of THC and CBD?
It all goes into the build out of the facility that you're in. If you're able to design and build the facility that's going to allow you to control your irrigation systems, your environmentals, your lighting, and you have strains that are relatively stable, it's pretty easy to do. Being in the desert, you would think that it presents a whole lot of challenges. We've come through a lot of hardships in our time here, but we've able to produce a pretty consistent product that our customers love.
What is the biggest hurdle you've had to overcome?
Environmentals. The building, we didn't build this from the ground up, so we've had to take a shell and make it our own. We've had our own internal hardships just from outside weather leaching in sort of thing, or just the humidity impacting the rooms, or not having enough cool air. The lights in our flower rooms do generate a lot of heat, so we want to make sure that rooms don't get too hot.
So what are we looking at in this room today?
This, as far as our clone room goes, this is the start. This is where everything starts for the company. In about 10 to 14 days, these guys get transferred over into our veg rooms, and from there they could just progress along the phases of the growing cycle. So this is our first step in our operational planning, where we have moms, we know what moms are available, we know how many cuts are going to be yielded off of that, and which rooms we have coming to be filled, and we plan accordingly from there.
All right, so then let's advance 14 days and show us what's next.
All right, so we'll head out this room then.
So we are now where?
We are now in the veg room. So this is the second phase in our growing process. After the clones are given roots, or grow roots, excuse me, they get transplanted into a different media, and this whole room is only designed to allow them to grow and to create more nodes and be ready to be transplanted into our flowering rooms.
What do you mean by different media?
So we went from a standard Grodan cube to a compost blend.
Right. So this is more of a soil.
More of a soil, yeah.
Right. Okay.
So by media I mean soil. Grodan is technically a media. It's just
a nutrient
thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So how many times do you retransplant these, or how many times do you transplant these pots?
Twice.
Twice. Okay.
Yeah. So they go from these 4-inch pots here into 8-inch pots once we are in our flowering rooms.
And how long does it take for a crop to go from a clone, like we saw in the other room, to a fully grown plant?
For our process here, we're generally looking around a month. That's just for us to get the size that we want and also allow the plant to be topped multiple times to get more shoots and more bud once it gets transplanted into our flowering rooms.
So that process gives you more bud, you say. So the more effort you put into it, the more reward you get.
Exactly. You can have a very unhealthy mom that you cut clones off of. Those clones are going to get transplanted into veg. Those veg plants are going to get transplanted into flower, and those negative characteristics or those traits are just going to carry all the way through. So this is a great opportunity for us to find the best looking plants to get transplanted into our flowering rooms. That's going to give us the most amount of yield.
You say best looking, so this is at this point a visual thing.
It is visual. I mean, a lot of the nutrient deficiencies or a lot of the issues that you see with plants, are very much visual. So it gives us a chance to identify those plants specifically that are having issues and either cull them all together or try and rehab them and put them in another room later down the production line.
These look wonderful green. Everything nicely consistent, nice and even. But then you have a couple of plants here with a couple of yellow spots on them.
It may not be getting the right nutrients, or it just may have been stunted from the get-go. So something that's going to look as unhealthy as this may not make it towards our flowering cycle. One thing to note is there is a significant time difference between the plants here and there, so it very well could snap out of it in the next couple weeks.
So you're a horticulturalist to a degree, to a large degree.
To a small degree, I've been fortunate enough to learn from the people before me, and I chalk a lot of where I am to them. But yeah, I'm starting to grow into it.
So at what point are we talking about genetics and genomes? Because you've got hybrid plants as well.
Yeah, just about everything nowadays is some sort of hybrid. You could have indica leaning, sativa leaning hybrids. At least in Las Vegas, we see a lot of people coming in looking for sativa dominant strains, and that's something that we've had to continually fight uphill to provide. It seems like once they're on the shelf, they're gone like that.
As I understand it, sativa, that's for sort of an energetic high, and indica is more for something, as they call it, couch lock.
Yeah, you think of it, indica in the couch, sativa is just more that euphoric, uplifting, social high that people come to Vegas to experience.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
They don't want to be in their hotel room sleeping. They want to be out on the strip doing things. And we do our best to cater to those people.
The thing is that I suppose for some people who aren't familiar with this world, they think that what you're smoking are the leaves, but you're not. No. And at this point, it doesn't look like any of this is ready to go on a shelf.
Right. Everything here is in a vegetative state. There's nothing that is smokable. You could smoke the leaf. It's going to give you a gnarly headache, and it's not going to get you high.
At this point, we're looking at hemp.
I wouldn't say hemp. It's just a cannabis plant that hasn't gone through its flowering cycle.
And at what point do we hit the flowering cycle, the cycle that ultimately gives us what people are looking for?
Once these plants are moved into an alternating 12 hours of light, 12 hours of darkness, that's where you start to see the circadian cycle take place.
Tell me about that, though. Why are we cycling 12 hours on, 12 hours off with the light?
Have you been outside?
Yeah.
Well, aside from the fact that light is what gives us the ability to grow, tell me about why it's 12 on, 12 off. Why not 6 on, 6 off?
It's the biological clock of the plant. It's essentially telling the plant that the seasons are changing and that it needs to reproduce. So the only thing that we're keeping that from doing is the presence of pollen or the male presence of cannabis. So everything in here is female. That's going to leave you with a bud rather than a bud that's completely seeded out and less enjoyable for the consumers and patients.
All right, so you can show us what's next?
Oh yeah, we're off to the flowering rooms.
So this is obviously the room everybody wants to see.
Oh yeah, so this is one of our 21 flowering rooms. This is where you actually start to see the characteristics of every genetic that we have in our locker. We're about 2 weeks away from harvest and probably another month or so away from this room hitting the shelves.
Okay, now you don't want anybody to touch these plants with our ungloved hands. Why?
Nevada has very strict testing regulations. It is 100% in the patient's and consumer's benefit. It is going to prevent us from any sort of cross-contamination and allow us to provide a clean, consistent product that everyone is looking for.
Right, you wouldn't go into a restaurant and start rifling through the tomatoes.
Exactly, yeah, you don't want to see the worker coming out of the bathroom touching the product that you're going to be smoking or enjoying later down the line.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. How old are these plants?
We're about 7 weeks in.
Okay.
Yep.
So how long are they going to be in here?
Another 2 weeks. So the standard flowering cycle is about 63 days, 9 weeks. We generally group like strains together, whether from nutrient uptake to flowering cycle to indica sativa. So
when you look at a plant, can you tell what strain it is just by looking at it?
From the vegetative stage, no. From this stage, yes. And I know that that's s'mores. I know that's the potion. Yeah, I mean, we can, around week 4 to 5, we can generally tell blindfolded which rooms have which plants.
And how many varieties do you grow?
We currently have about 80 different genetics in constant rotation and about another 100 or so in our locker, 100 to 150.
Now you can tell blindfolded going into a room what's in that room. I imagine a lot of that has to do with the terpenes that are in any given cannabis plant.
Yeah, some of them are harder to tell than others, but we have a lot of signature strains here, like our Forbidden Fruit, Tropicana Cookies, S'mores even being one of them, Cherry Cobbler, that have a very distinct terpene profile.
So explain for those of us who aren't familiar with terpenes, because a tomato will have a dozen or so, but a cannabis plant will have, 100 or so?
Cannabis, yeah, I mean, over 100.
And what is a terpene?
Terpene's just a smell. I mean, everything has terpenes in it. Cannabis terpenes generally give you more of a healthy effect or a holistic effect, whereas THC is more of the psychoactive. So you start to see people not only looking at THC potency, but also looking at terpene profiles to pair their illnesses to what they are.
And so if you're looking for something that gives you sort of a fruity taste in your mouth, you're going to have certain terpenes you're looking for in any given strain, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. There's definitely strains you can tell right off the get-go, just from smelling a bud pod, if you're going to enjoy it or not. Those really deep, earthy smells are going to be the ones that generally put you in the couch sort of thing.
So when we look at this single plant, here, how much marijuana are you getting off that plant?
Per plant, I mean, I could break it down from there. What we generally do, about 2 pounds per light. That's the 2 to 2.2 pounds per light. That's the metric that we use to gauge the proficiency and efficiency of all of our rooms. So each table, I would call it 4.5 pounds of finished product to be delivered to the customer and patients.
Las Vegas.